Good afternoon. Welcome to the 64th Annual Beverly Hills Bar Supreme Court Luncheon. I'm Richard Kaplan. I'm president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. As you can see, we are starting on time in order to conclude, as the court has requested due to its afternoon calendar. So we should be out of here by 1:15. So that being said, first I'm going to go a little bit off the script and just tell everybody, just in case in years past the court has been late. And so I had a few things planned. So we had Supreme Court trivia, but I'm not going to get to it today, but I'm going to leave two questions out there just for everybody. One, which Supreme Court justice knew how to operate a tractor by the age of 14? And which Supreme Court justice was unable to find a job after law school and became a blackjack dealer in Reno, Nevada? And at the end, if you don't know by the end, I'll pass those along. So, please allow me to introduce our special guests here today. Up on the dais, starting at the far right, starting at your right, on my left, is Mayor Julian Gold, Mayor of the City of Beverly Hills. Elizabeth Hall Peterson, President of the Barristers of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. Linda Spiegel, President of the Beverly Hills Bar Foundation. Mark Steinberg, Chief Executive Officer of the Beverly Hills Bar Foundation. I've already introduced myself. Then on the far right is Judge Deborah Sanchez of the Los Angeles Superior Court. Mike Fuhrer, Los Angeles City Attorney. Bonita, also known as Bonnie Moore, Chair of the Supreme Court Lunch Donor Committees. And Justice Ming Chen of the California Supreme Court. I would also like to introduce the BHBA officers and past presidents. My colleagues on the executive committee, President-elect Levon Lawson, First Vice President Michael Sohigian, Second Vice President Adam Siegler, Secretary-Treasurer Tony Ross, Barrister President Elizabeth Hall Peterson, Barrister President-elect Jack McMorrow, and immediate past President Howard Fisher. Also, some past presidents in attendance: Ken Petroulis, Mark Poster, Mark Salas, Nick Alice, Dixon Dern, Howard Fredman, Lawrence Jacobson, Diane Karpman, Nancy Knupfer, Linda Spiegel, Mark Steinberg, Michael White, Steve Rauscher, John Rubiner, and Larry May. We also have, in a couple of minutes, Justice Chin will introduce his colleagues on the California Supreme Court. At this time, it's my pleasure and honor on behalf of the Beverly Hills Bar Association to welcome currently sitting judicial officers to our luncheon this year. I would appreciate it if the judges of the U.S. District Court, U.S. Courts of Appeals, and other federal judicial officers would stand and be recognized. I would now appreciate it if the justices of the California Courts of Appeal, judges of the Superior Courts, and other state judicial officers would stand and be recognized. We also have some VIPs, our law school deans. We have Christopher David Ruiz Cameron, Vice Dean Professor, Southwestern School of Law. Naomi Goodnow, Dean of Students, Pepperdine Law School. Yasmin McMorrin, Associate Director of Student Support, USC Law School. Graham Scher, Assistant Dean for Employer Engagement, Loyola Law School. And Jennifer Mnookin, Dean, UCLA Law School. And we would also like to thank the following member benefit provider for its support of the Bar Association and this event, Swift Chip, Inc. And lastly, we can never do an event like this without the great support of the staff of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, who put endless hours into putting this together and help it run so smoothly, as well as the staff here at the Hilton Hotel. So thank you. We are pleased to have Mayor Dr. Julian Gold with us today. Mayor Gold, as a doctor, was elected to the Beverly Hills City Council in 2011. He served as mayor in 2015 and currently serves as mayor today. He previously served on the Recreation and Parks and Traffic and Parking Commissions, of which he was chairperson. Dr. Gold graduated from NYU School of Medicine and is currently co-chairman of the Department of Anesthesiology at Cedars-Sinai and co-managing partner of General Anesthesia Specialists Partnership Medical Group. He has been a resident of Beverly Hills for more than 20 years. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Julian Gold.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mark. And thank you all for being here today. I'm actually here representing the entire Beverly Hills City Council, and it gives me great pleasure to do so. In my last mayoral stint, they've kind of brought me out of mayoral retirement, so this is my second time around. I also had the opportunity of being here for this event. And really, I really want to express the appreciation of our community for all that you do. I know that this is the 64th event. I know that the Supreme Court has been here for each of those, which of itself seems pretty remarkable to me. And I know of all the good work that you do. Not too long ago, I had the opportunity to attend an event with the barristers, in support of the barristers, and we discussed the Roxbury Park legal services which this foundation supports. And so this is an extension of that. This is an opportunity to give back to the community, and we are the recipients of that, and for that we're thankful. So really, nothing more than to express a thank you, to encourage the good work that you do, to thank all of the justices for being here. I should shout out to Howard Fisher, who happens to be our sitting city treasurer. I don't know if Howard's in the room. If he is, Howard, I'll see you in just a little bit at this council meeting. But really, to thank you all for being here, to thank you for the opportunity for my being here, to be able to wish you well on behalf of our community. So thank you very much.
One moment. Otherwise, I can just remove it. I'll just. Next up will be the president of our foundation, the former president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, a former barrister president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. She currently practices real estate law in Beverly Hills, my good friend Linda Spiegel.
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the foundation, I'd like to introduce our past presidents and acknowledge our scholarship donors. Our past presidents, and if you would hold your applause until I read all the names, I would appreciate it. Bonnie Moore, Nicholas Alice, Paul Bazile, Steve Gardner, Kenneth Petrulis, and Geraldine Wiley. Now you may applaud. This year, the following firms are scholarship donors, which means that their names are inscribed in each scholarship certificate given today. We would like to thank Girardi Keese, Greenberg Traurig, Greenus Martin Stein Richland LLP, and we would also like to thank our champions of justice donors, Greenberg Glusker, Oldman, Cooley, Salas, Bernberg, Coleman, and Gold, Chernoff, Bidart, Echeverria, and Valenci Rose. Our press reception co-sponsors are Aikengump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld, Bird, Morella, Boxer, Wolpert, Nessim, Drooks, Linsenberg, and Rowe, Freeman, and Smiley, Marshall Grossman of Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe. And finally, we'd like to thank our Rule of Law writing competition sponsor, Goodson, Wachtel, and Petrulis. Please thank them along with us. As has been our tradition, we invite a past Bar Association Scholarship recipient to make remarks at our luncheon. This year, we are pleased to welcome Judge Deborah Sanchez. Judge Sanchez is judge of the Superior Court of Los Angeles. She received her BA from California State University at Long Beach and her JD from Loyola Law School. She became an attorney in 1987 and practiced in both civil and criminal cases. During her career, Judge Sanchez has served as a criminal prosecutor on cases involving child pornography, exploitation and molestation, hate crimes, grand theft, wage and hour violations, and Cal OSHA death case matters, among many more. Over time, she has authored numerous articles on legal issues, and she has instructed many prosecutors, law enforcement officers, and students on a wide range of topics and the California justice system. Please join me in welcoming Judge Deborah Sanchez.
Aku kiti cantik. Sexuala aku ko kaktis muich wala sanchi kakti Ingles. Kapanis malo ki Swahili na kalamo hilimu. Kakinalgun hil kuku hil itishu. E al kalikwash hil itishu. Greetings, friends. My name in Chumash is She Loves the People. My name in English, Deborah Sanchez. My ancestral village is at Swahili on the island of Limu, which is also now called Santa Cruz Island. And I want to thank the people of this land, the original caretakers. They're still here. So I've been a Superior Court judge now for more than 11 years. But in 1984, I was a young mom, single mother living in the Wilmington housing projects. I had just come off welfare the year before, and I was struggling to raise my son and build a better life for both of us. So the scholarship at that time meant a lot to me. Poverty has a way of affecting your mind, your body, and your spirit in every way you can imagine. Not having a car or a telephone, who would know that about a law student? I had to take the bus into Loyola, and there were times when I had no control over what was going on. Like, so for example, the schedule. I had a mandatory class that ended at 10:15 at night. I took 2 buses home, and I'd get back after midnight. The bus would drop me off at Buttress, the Port of LA, and the Los Angeles Wilmington housing projects where I lived. And then I'd have to walk 2 blocks in the dark, and expose myself at many times to dangerous situations. There were drugs and violence everywhere at that time in the 80s. And I think that the scholarship, what it meant to me was a relief, a little bit of a relief, and a cushion to all the other things that I had to face. But it meant much more to me than that. The scholarship meant that you believed in me. For somebody who had just come off welfare, who was living in circumstances where there were violence and drugs, and the safety of her child was always a concern, that scholarship brought me hope. That scholarship meant that you believed in me. I deduce that you wouldn't give a scholarship to somebody you didn't think was going to get out of law school. So that really meant a lot. And so I want to thank the Beverly Hills Bar Association. You never know how you're going to impact somebody's life, because that scholarship helped me move forward to continue law school, pass the bar, become an attorney for almost 20 years, and then a judge. And you're part of my story, you're part of my journey, you're part of our collective well-being as a community. In this community, we need to take care of each other. So for all the donors to the scholarship, you never know how you're going to impact the world. And I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Judge Sanchez. In addition to receiving great pleasure from giving out scholarships, it gives us tremendous pleasure to see how our scholarships are put to use. So thank you so much. I'd like to thank our Donor Development Committee, our committee chair, Bonnie Moore, and committee members, Howard Fredman, Dira Imam, Jim Jahant, Mark Poster, Ann Simley, Geraldine Wiley, and co-chair, and Mark Steinberg, our CEO. I'd also like to thank the Scholarship Committee Chair, from the bottom of my heart, Alan Forsley, and our committee members, Natalia Aronovich, Robert Aronoff, Judith Dornstein, Doron Igbali, Ferris Greenberger, Marion Miller, Bonnie Moore, and Darren Schlechter. And thank you to the Rule of Law Committee, Chair Ken Petroulis, and committee members Alan Forsley, Howard Fredman, David Hackett, Matthew Kanan, Bonnie Moore, Mark Poster, and Darren Schlechter. Thank you to all of them who did all the hard work in selecting our recipients for today. Class of 2018, Beverly Hills Bar Foundation Scholarship recipients not only are academically qualified and have a financial need, but more importantly, each has demonstrated a commitment to community service. Our scholarship committee interviewed outstanding students, each and every one of them. All those interviewed have done extraordinary community service work and were deserving and could have benefited from a scholarship from the Beverly Hills Bar Foundation. Sadly, our funds are limited and dictated that we narrow the field to the 7 from our local law schools whom we honor today. On behalf of the Beverly Hills Bar Foundation, it is my pleasure and delight to present the 2018 Law School Scholarship recipients. But rather than my telling you about them, we will let them introduce themselves. Please enjoy the screen.
I am a first-generation American, and my parents came here during the Iranian Revolution, and they both sought asylum here. So when I was growing up, I always was very thankful to be in this country and to have an education in this country, and always knew I wanted to do something with my career that served people who were not as fortunate as me to grow up here or somewhere like here. So that is kind of how I landed on a legal career after reading a few books where I saw stories of lawyers who used their legal degree, their law degree, to go out into the world and serve people who are underrepresented and overlooked and who are not cared for by their government and who are not free.
When I was in my undergrad, I was interested in criminal justice reform, but I wasn't sure exactly where I would fit into that. And my first job after law school was actually at an Innocence Project in New Orleans, Louisiana. And it was there that I really kind of like dug into a lot of issues and saw just like the faces of the people that are stuck in the criminal system that we have in the United States. And from there, my career kind of took me in a path that kind of led me to realize that law was the way that I can really affect the most change.
I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go to law school. I did feel like a lot of my colleagues at UCLA were going to law school, and I felt the pressure to kind of do that. But because I wasn't sure, I took 2 years off, and in that time I worked at an immigration firm in Riverside, a small firm. But it was through my work there that I realized how the law really is an effective medium to bring about the social change that I want to see happen.
When I assisted with KIND in their legal clinics, one of the interpretations that I did was assisting a 5-year-old child and really listening to their experience coming into the U.S. and some of the things that the child had to face, in that journey coming here.
I've tried to do a lot of different work in a lot of different areas to really benefit people. Probably the thing that I'm proudest of was last summer I had the chance to volunteer at Trans Pride LA. It's an annual festival that's held for trans-identifying people at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. And while I was there, I got to help with their name and gender marker change clinic. And to really work with a population of people that is so used to society in general, ignoring them, really vilifying them and not wanting to help them, to know that there was somebody there that had skills and experiences that could help them achieve something they wanted, which is to be legally recognized as the people that they are, and to do that work with a smile and to help them get from point A to point Z and doing it super quickly and efficiently. It just made me feel so fulfilled.
The summer after my first year of law school, I went to the Philippines and worked for International Justice Mission as a summer legal intern. And there I assisted a team of local private prosecutors and the investigations team and the social workers and the psychologists. We all worked together to find, rescue, and prosecute. I was in the room as the police were doing their operations, and then I went with the team to the home where the 2 girls were as we saved them from their mother and grandmother who had been sexually exploiting them. And when we arrived there, my supervisor told me, okay, I want you to hold the 2-year-old on the drive back. And that was a little bit uncommon because usually the social workers are the ones who hold the children. So I held a 2-year-old girl in my arms as we drove in a van for over an hour to the safe house, and she cried because we had taken her away from her mom. But what she didn't realize, because she was so young, is that her mom had been sexually exploiting her on the internet. That experience was extremely impactful for me. I realized how large of an impact I could have on somebody's life with my legal degree. That experience was heartbreaking, but I also left the Philippines knowing that that is the kind of work I want to do. That is the kind of powerful work that I feel like I am called to do with my law degree.
My end goal is that either I can start my own nonprofit or start my own legal firm where I'm able to do nonprofit work and get the cases that maybe other nonprofits won't be able to accept and actually represent clients in the courts.
When I get out of law school, I want to be a public defender. And in 10 years, I want to continue to do that on-the-ground work, but I also want to be thinking bigger. I want to be thinking about prison reform, criminal justice reform in general. And I think being on the ground in the courtroom every single day as a public defender is going to be an incredible place to start in order to actually understand those issues even deeper and more fully, and to understand what the possible remedies would be.
I feel that now, even just being a law student, I do feel like my work in the Juvenile Innocence Clinic is meaningful to me, and every case that I work on really leaves an impact on me. So if I can just continue doing that, whether I'm at a nonprofit, whether I'm at a private law firm, if I'm continuing to feel like I'm making a positive change, then that's all I can hope for.
Well, I took a religion and the Constitution course at USC, and I became really interested in issues of religion in the law. So that's what initially drew me to the topic and made me more interested in reading more about it, learning more about it, and writing about it. And it makes a lot of interesting points about the changing landscape of marriage in our day and age, and spiritual custody and how that works, how religious exemptions work, and just all of it together and how they're related.
I was doing some research into how the rule of law will change over time and not just sticking with the same status quo that we've always had, how it's going to develop and change And I thought that something else that kind of fell in line with that was technology and how technology is constantly developing and changing. And I think in the future we'll see a lot of developments in technology that lead to the necessity for more administration, more regulation, and those are kind of untapped areas of the law that I think will require a lot of thinking, development, academia in the future.
Thank you for supporting us with our education.
Thank you to the Beverly Hills Bar Association for awarding me with the Rule of Law Writing Competition Grand Prize.
So I'd sincerely love to thank the Beverly Hills Bar Association and the Bar Foundation for giving me the opportunity not only to speak about the work that I do, but to be recognized for it.
Without your support, I definitely would not be able to stand here today to reach my dream.
Doing this work is very important to me, and I'm very passionate about it, and the Beverly Hills Bar Foundation is something that's going to help me get there.
It's not easy to be a first-generation student trying to navigate this process of law school and trying to do public interest on top of that. It's difficult financially, it takes a toll emotionally and physically on the student, and for the Beverly Hills Bar Association to offer these opportunities really make me feel, and I'm sure I speak for the other scholarship recipients, it makes us feel like there are people in our corner that are supporting us and that do believe in the work that we want to pursue.
Truly, truly remarkable individuals. We congratulate the scholarship recipients and award winners and ask you to stand and remain standing as I call each of your names. Joy Yin Chang. Applause are appropriate. Nidia Gutierrez. Edrina Nazarade. Lucas Bueno. Luis Vasquez. Rachel Feldman. And Rochelle Escobar. And so now I'm going to tell you from which law schools each of these scholarship recipients came from. Joy Yin Chang from Loyola Law School, Nidia Gutierrez, Loyola Law School, Edrina Nazarade, Pepperdine Law School, Lucas Bueno, UCLA School of Law, Luis Vasquez, UCLA School of Law, Rachel Feldman, USC Gould School of Law, and Rochelle Escobar of Southwestern Law School. A very big congratulations to each of you. And for the Rule of Law Writing Competition Grand Prize winner, Sandra Farzam of USC Gould School of Law. And Rule of Law Honorable Mention winner, Brittany Litzinger of USC Gould School of Law. The scholarships and winner certificates will be presented by Scholarship Committee Alan Forsley and Rule of Law Chair Ken Petroulis at the conclusion of our luncheon. I have been asked by the Beverly Hills Bar Association Board of Governors to inform you that each of these law students will also receive a complimentary Beverly Hills Bar Association membership for the year. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to stay connected to the Beverly Hills Bar Association. We are in your corner always. And now I will call up our president, Rick Kaplan.
Bonnie Moore is a principal with Moore, Ruddle, and Century City, practicing in the areas of business and entertainment litigation, employment litigation, product liability, professional liability. This year, she has moved from co-chair to chair of the Donor Development Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, Bonnie Moore.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce Justice Chin, who's here with us today. Justice Chin was born and raised in Klamath Falls, Oregon. His family moved to San Jose, and then he attended Bellarmine College Preparatory, graduating in 1960. Justice Chin received a BA in political science from the University of San Francisco and then studied at the University of San Francisco Law School, where he obtained a JD in 1967. After graduating, he was commissioned as a captain in the United States Army, and in 1969 was awarded both a Commendation Medal and Bronze Star for his meritorious service in the Vietnam War. Thank you for your service. He's well known among California employment lawyers, including me, as one of the 4 current authors of the Rudder Guide, which he was just talking to me about updating. He is involved in its annual update, so that's the extra burden of his work. In 1988, Justice Chin was appointed as a judge of the Alameda County Superior Court, and then in 1990, Governor George Deukmejian elevated Justice Chin to the position of Associate Justice of the California Court of Appeal, 1st District. In 1994, Governor Pete Wilson appointed Justice Chin as the presiding justice of the Court of Appeal. And then on January 25th, 1996, Governor Wilson appointed Justice Chin as an Associate Justice of the California Supreme Court. On December 16th, 2014, Chief Justice Tani Kantil Sakaue named Justice Chin to the California Judicial Council for a 2-year term. In his first decade on the court, he authored the most majority opinions at the Supreme Court. Among his notable cases is his 2008 dissent in the in re marriage cases. I welcome and thank Justice Chin for joining us today.
Thank you, Bonnie. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I come to you today with a heavy heart. The Chief Justice's mother passed away last night. She sends her regrets that she cannot be here with you. We all extend to her and her family our thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleagues on the California Supreme Court. And I'll start with the oldest. I should say most senior. Justice Carol Corrigan and I have been together for more years than either of us want to admit. We both came from the same DA's office, the same trial court, not at the same time, fortunately. I'm older, not necessarily wiser, but we finally met on the Court of Appeal, Division III, and what glorious years those were. Carol spoke at my confirmation hearing when I came to the Supreme Court. I spoke at Carol's confirmation hearing when she came to the Supreme Court. So we're just kind of trading stories here. I also would like to introduce Justice Mariano Florentino Cuellar. When Tino came on the court, I thanked him for making Ming Chin sound common. Shortly after Goodwin and Leandra and Tino came on the court, I invited them all over to, Carol and I, my wife, invited them all over to our house for a barbecue. And we were all out on the deck having a good time. And you know that Tino is married to U.S. District Court Judge Lucy Coe. Well, in the middle of this barbecue, Lucy is looking right at me, and she says, "Ming, stop that." What was I doing? She was talking to her son. His name is Ming. Actually, that's his Korean name, but they call him Ming. So I get a thank you note from Tino and Lucy, and it says, "From Ming 2 to Ming 1, thank you for a terrific day." Our third colleague who is here today is Justice Leandra Kruger. And what a pleasure it has been to get to know Goodwin, Leandra, and Tino these last several years. As you all know, Justice Kruger is a relatively new mother. And she already had a son, so she now has 2 young children at home. So we drink a lot of coffee. Before we came to this luncheon, Leandra suggested that we stop for a cup of coffee. So we did that. We went to Nespresso. I have never been into a coffee shop like that, only in Beverly Hills. Mark asked me to say a few words, but I don't want to encroach on my time, so I'll just be brief. Several years ago, the former Chief Ron George appointed me the chair of a commission. It's called the Commission for Impartial Courts. When Ron asked me to do that, I said, oh no, not another committee. And then when he told me there were 80 people on it, I said, 80 people, a committee? We won't get anything done. As it turns out, we worked very hard over a period of several years and came up with some strong recommendations, many of which have been implemented. The object of the exercise was to prevent what was happening in many other states throughout the country from coming to California and attacking independent courts. We were successful for a lot of years. This was probably 8, 9, maybe 10 years ago by now, and we have been really pretty successful in warding off some of the things that were happening in other states that would encroach upon impartial courts and impartial judges. But this election cycle, there are things that are occurring that give me pause. The Beverly Hills Bar Association has always been our partner. And every time the chief comes before you, she says, thank you. So I'm going to say thank you on her behalf, because you have always stood up when the courts have been under attack, whether it's budget or impartiality or whatever the issue is. The Beverly Hills Bar has always been there, and we thank you for that. The items that have come up in this election cycle are troubling. For example, 4 judges in San Francisco are being challenged, not because the quality of their work, not because they don't work hard, but because they were appointed by the governor of the other party. This cannot stand. Please stand up again with us to fight this trend in California. As my good friend Justice Cuellar said, challenging judges not for the quality of their work, but because they were appointed by the other party is crass political opportunism. I'm going from memory, but I think those were your words, Tino. I agree with you. We should all stand up against this. Judicial independence is not to protect judges, not to let judges do whatever they want. It is to make sure that judges do what they must. That's what we want judges to do. We want them to be independent, not focusing on what the masses are saying about this sentence or that sentence, but based upon the facts and the law, judges must make the decision, and they must call it, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the public opinion. We do not want judges to raise their hands to test the political winds every time they are called upon to make tough decisions. The Beverly Hills Bar has always stood with us on this issue. You stood with me when I was challenged in the retention election in 1998. I have always been grateful for that. So I leave you with that message. Please continue to support fair and impartial courts. And congratulations.
Thank you, Justice Chen. Mike Fuhr has long been one of California's leading lawyers and lawmakers. As LA's chief lawyer and prosecutor since July 2013, he has brought an innovative, problem-solving focus that combines tough and effective prosecution with initiatives to improve public safety and the quality of life throughout the city. In March 2017, Fuhr was re-elected to a second term without opposition. His office has also been at the forefront of key national issues ranging from gun violence prevention and consumer protection to justice system reform and challenges to recent federal policies that threaten fundamental rights and public safety. And under the city attorney's broad authority, Fuhr has brought up a wide range of lawsuits to protect consumers. In 2017, the American Bar Association presented its top award in the nation for a public sector law office to Fuhr's office, the first city attorney's office ever to receive the distinguished Hodgson Award, recognizing sustained outstanding performance or a specific and extraordinary service by a government or public sector law office. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome LA City Attorney Mike Fuhr.
Thank you so much. That was very kind. I want to begin because I'm a husband, not just a city attorney, by pointing out that my wife Gail was just elevated to the Court of Appeal by Governor Brown. Do you want to say something nice to Gail back there? That's a good thing. Gail is very modest, but I'm very proud. And I'm going to hear about this when I get home. I'm going to have to start, we were kidding at home because I now have to start calling her Your Majesty, but you know, it's no big deal. Many of you know how that is. It just reaffirms, in fact, I really appreciate those of you who have been reminding me what a second banana role it is that I play in our relationship. I knew it already, but thank you for reminding me about that today. And I also want to point out Jim Clark, who's the Chief Deputy of the City Attorney's Office, is here, and I want to recognize Jim for his tremendous service for all of us. And before I start, I want to say one last thing. You know, I was listening to Judge Sanchez's remarks and the emotion with which she delivered them. And then I was inspired so much by the scholarship recipients who are here today, who chose to be lawyers for the right reasons. And I want to look to you for leadership as we're turning the page in our country. You are the leaders who are going to demonstrate that it's such a privilege to be a lawyer, and we play this essential role in our society. So good luck to all of you. Now, Justice Chin said, I don't want to take much time from Fuhr's presentation, and I decided why not just pick off where he left off. So let's start with that. When I was deciding what to do after law school, I mentioned to my constitutional law professor, Larry Tribe, that I'd been offered a clerkship by Joe Grodin on the California Supreme Court. Tribe said to me, Joe Grodin is going to be the next great justice in California history. If you have that chance, you need to take it. And serving as Justice Grodin's clerk was a highlight of my career. 2 years later, Grodin and Justices Reynoso and Byrd were swept off the bench following a demagogic campaign targeting Byrd for being soft on crime. Grodin and Reynoso refused to distance themselves from Byrd. They knew it was politically suicidal to be associated with her, and they didn't always agree with her, not by a long shot. But Grodin and Reynoso believed that it would undermine judicial independence to leave their colleague to twist in the wind, and that doing so would surrender to the politics of fear. I've been thinking about that low moment in California history because our nation's justice system and the rule of law itself are now under serious threat. Consider the revelations that the president believes his powers are so broad that he could never obstruct justice and pardon himself. Recall those so-called courts who dare defy the administration. That Mexican judge, born and raised in Indiana, who apparently should have been disqualified from handling a matter involving the president. And from our Attorney General. I'm really amazed that a judge sitting on an island in the Pacific, that'd be the state of Hawaii, can issue an order that stops the President of the United States. It's as though the first thing we should do is kill all the lawyers has become a through line. Shakespeare never intended that to be a joke. His point was that those who understood the law were the bulwark against tyranny. Get rid of us. Today, one might say, erode public faith in us and in the justice system itself. And the door is open to a government that tacks much closer to authoritarianism than democracy, as checks on executive power weaken. This is a trend around the world, and it's infecting how Americans think of the rule of law. Assaults on our courts are bound up with upending faith in objective truth, in facts and in science, because without constraints of law and truth and facts and science, it becomes all much easier for leaders who are bent on having it their own way from doing just that. So what happens when this brand of authority is challenged, is questioned? For decades, federal administrations, Republican and Democratic, have provided grants supporting community-based policing in Los Angeles and elsewhere. But when this administration sought for the first time to tie police collaboration with civil immigration enforcement to those grants, we sued. We claimed this was executive overreach, that linking civil immigration factors to a community-based policing grant had nothing to do with what Congress had intended. Judge Reel agreed and issued a nationwide injunction barring the administration from these factors. Then a couple weeks later, just very recently, the administration issued a solicitation for another long-standing public safety grant, including the very same civil immigration factors. So we reminded the administration of Judge Reel's order, and we noted that the court's reasoning extended with equal force to this latest move. We asked that the factors be eliminated, otherwise we would sue again. The response? Since you've taken that position, we're rescinding the grant solicitation altogether. No law enforcement agency will get the money. Whatever happened to abiding by a court ruling? Appealing is one thing. Petulance at the expense of public safety is something else again. Perhaps this tactic shouldn't be surprising given the stated goal to weaponize federal funding with respect to jurisdictions that don't succumb to certain immigration policies. And it's little wonder that when confronted with a judiciary that still believes in the Constitution, the administration has sowed distrust in our courts and taken steps that threaten the administration of justice. As recently, when Attorney General Sessions hostilely dismissed our Chief Justice's assertion that ICE enforcement at courthouses could deter victims and witnesses of crime from coming forward, jeopardizing public safety. Yeah, this is a tumultuous, divisive, dangerous time. Our democracy can be fragile, and our Constitution challenged. Several weeks ago, the United States Supreme Court took up the challenge to the third Muslim travel ban. Last year, on the first weekend of the first Muslim ban, I learned of the havoc that was erupting at airports throughout the United States and went to LAX to try to get the detainees released. It was a profoundly unlawyerly moment. I didn't know where the detainees were, who at the airport had authority over them, where that person was located, and if I had any real power at all. In short, I had no plan. But I had to go. It felt like our deepest values, and perhaps our nation itself, were on the line. I spent hours at LAX that night. There were hundreds of protesters chanting from behind police barricades to let the detainees out. I learned who the Homeland Security official was in charge, but he refused to meet with me. In the Bradley terminal at LAX, there are ramps that descend into the location from which incoming international travelers emerge after they've gone through customs. I assumed that's where the detainees were and began to walk down that ramp to see them and the federal official in charge. A top law enforcement officer there put his hand on my shoulder, telling me that while I may have been the lawyer for LAX, I had no authority on those ramps, which are international territory. He said I had no right to be there. I was furious. I shrugged to get his hand off of my shoulder. And he said to me, "Sir, please don't put either of us in the position you're about to place us in." I'm assuming he was wondering who was going to prosecute me. You know, at that point, I got a cell phone call, and I, for the moment, de-escalated the situation. But the protesters were watching all this, and their chants changed from "let them out" to "let Mike in." True. Then a protester beckoned me. She said that her father had Parkinson's disease. She said that he didn't have his medicine and he was being detained. "You have to help him," she said. Around 11:30 that night, the Homeland Security official finally deigned to meet with me. By then, one court had issued an emergency order barring the deportation of the detainees. Are you following that order? Not at liberty to say. How many detainees are there, and where are they? Can't tell you. Can I meet with the detainees? No. I then described my conversation with the daughter of the detainee who had Parkinson's disease. I said constitutional principles don't operate in the ether. They matter in real life. They matter to her father just then. I have an airport to run. At about midnight, I called my chief of staff, and on Sunday there were about 10 lawyers in my office assembled to grapple with the administration. Our office has since been involved in at least 15 separate matters where we're disputing the constitutionality of administration policies. But our national context right now goes far beyond litigation. We've seen Muslim Americans under attack. When a San Fernando Valley student had her hijab ripped from her head, I went to her school to talk with her peers at an assembly. How should the school support the victim? What should happen to the perpetrator? How have the values of the school been affected by this? It was a conversation we would do well to mirror as adults, tackling complex questions of diversity, of justice, of the role of punishment, of the value of reconciliation. The students were eager to engage. And then came Charlottesville, the further emboldening of neo-Nazis and white supremacists, a profound challenge to principles that ground our democracy. And this, one of the least discussed aspects of what happened in Charlottesville that weekend was what happened at the synagogue. On that Saturday, there were 40 people, congregants, assembled to worship. Outside, there were 3 neo-Nazis with semi-automatic weapons. The president of the synagogue directed the congregants to leave through the back door so they wouldn't be seen. Evening services were canceled because on social media, the white supremacists were calling for the synagogue to be burned down just last year in our country. Now we're grappling with profound questions about the treatment of people of color, especially African Americans, for activities that are legal and ordinary. Not to mention profound questions about the treatment of women and girls in the workplace and beyond. And the scourge of gun violence intruding into our sacred places, into our schools, in neighborhoods where kids grow up thinking that shootings are just a fact of life. 16-year-old Alea Eastman was a student in her Holocaust Studies class at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. When the bullets began to fly, they whizzed by her head. Next to her, Nicholas Roré was hit, and he slumped to the floor. To save herself, she thought, I should better do the same thing, and so she fell to the ground as though she'd been shot. But the bullets kept flying. So Alea took Nicholas's dead body and used it as a shield to protect herself from the bullets that never seemed to stop. Alea has been deeply traumatized, and she's very angry. Angry at how little has changed on Capitol Hill since that day. You might have seen just yesterday, the Parkland students have begun a national campaign to register young voters, to create the change that the adults before them could not. As we contemplate our place at this gut check moment, we should take a page from the Parkland kids, because they're striving to make a difference, and so should we. Now, Justice Liu isn't here, but he gave a speech at my daughter's law school graduation. I'm going to take a page from the topics, which were justice reform and access to justice, for just a moment. Regarding access to justice, as the former director of Beth Tzedek Legal Services, when I was a state legislator, I wrote the Sargent Shriver Civil Counsel Act. It was an act designed to move California closer to a civil Gideon model, where everyone, regardless of income, had access to a lawyer at a key moment. My bill called for innovative models of legal services delivery that would bring providers and the court system together. In the teeth of the recession, it was tough to find a funding source for that bill and even tougher to get it passed, but we got it passed. It didn't hurt that we called it the Sargent Shriver Civil Counsel Act, and the governor was Schwarzenegger, married to, well, okay. Right now, though, future funding for the bill, literally today, is in peril in the legislature. The budget process is happening this week. The Judicial Council and the broader legal community should speak out now to boost this vital program. And as for criminal justice reform, I'll just mention this one thing. Prosecutors like me should view our success as reducing recidivism rather than having a high conviction rate, especially when it comes to misdemeanors where the sanctions won't make much of a difference. What can this paradigm shift look like? Consider our office's Neighborhood Justice Program, which is designed to reduce recidivism and bring the justice system closer to the communities where an offense occurred. Our program relies on volunteer panels trained in restorative justice to determine the fates of offenders. And let me draw from a real example. We deal with first-time nonviolent offenders. A woman lived in her car with her kids. She stole what you would call basic necessities of life from the Kmart in the neighborhood. She was humiliated. But as we require, she took responsibility for her actions and came before our panel. The members were very empathetic. Tears flowed. But then one of our panelists said, you know, I'm poor, I live in this neighborhood, I shop at that Kmart, and I pay more than I should because people like you steal from there, and now they have to have a line for loss in their budget. This is not, he said, a victimless crime. The panel then prescribed a community obligation for our participant to perform. Obligations might be lecturing high school students on the dangers of alcohol abuse, or fixing a vandalized piece of property, or cleaning up graffiti. We then noted that the participant needed job training. We told her we'd offer it to her for free. So the result? She has a job. She has an apartment. And she is never committing a crime again. I know this because across our broad program, where nationally recidivism rates are between 50 and 65% for these crimes, in our program, 2 to 5. I know she's not committing a crime again. Washington, though, is cutting back on programs like ours. You can advocate, facilitate, volunteer in efforts like these to build a far more just and resilient and safe society. And that's the thing. The Parkland kids cannot do it alone. They need us in this room to stand up. We can't be spectators anymore. We have to stand up for the rule of law, for common sense gun laws, for access to justice, for criminal justice reform, because it won't be long before our kids and our grandkids ask of us, where were you Where were you when your nation and your world needed your activism so much? What did you sacrifice? What did you risk when the chips were down? I think each of us in this room would like to be able to respond by our actions now. You know what? We made you proud. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike, for that very motivational speech. And with that in note, I do remind everybody, please vote today. Get out there. You still got plenty of time. So thank you, everybody. I hope everyone makes it back next year. Please do not forget to take a copy of the Daily Journal on your way out, and have a great day. Thank you.